and welcome to this Retrofit course Q&A for Coaction, practitioner-led passive house training. So I'm Will South, I'm from Etude, I'm a passive house certifier and engineer, and I'm joined by Sally.
Hi, I'm Sally Godber from Warm and also Coaction. And part of what I'm interested in is both. We've been involved in multiple projects doing deep retrofit in terms of our practice, and also having done it personally in terms of the Warm Benefit Office, which I'm talking to you from myself, and also various personal projects as well. So this is all about the reality of doing it.
Great. We're going to introduce you to the Retrofit course, but before we do that, I'll just give you a bit of background on the course itself. So we're recording this session just to be able to sort of spread it a bit wider. So if you do speak, then just be sort of respectful to us and your fellow attendees. Feel free to post questions in the chat, or there's a Q&A part to this as well, and we'll do our best to answer them afterwards. And I hope you enjoy it and it's informative. So to get the sort of juices flowing and to sort of have a bit of an idea about what this is about, we think this is a really good example photo. So this is somebody installing external wall insulation. Looks like EPS polystyrene insulation, and they're installing it onto a pebble dash background. And the sort of course really is about this. Is about this being actually not that great, and we want to do it better. And the sort of reasons why it's not that great, we sort of dig into. But one I can see straight off the bat here is where the window is. There's like a little bit of window reveal, which is completely uninsulated. And the implication of that would be eventually there'd be mold on the inside of the window. And actually, by insulating it like this, you're making it worse. Whereas if you did insulation like this and added a bit across the reveal, it would make it so much better and improve the internal environment. So we're about that sort of detail. There's lots more in this photo which we'd explore in the course. So next
Oh,
one, Sally.
sorry.
So the Coaction was set up in 2009, although we've been going probably independently a little bit longer than that. We're independent and not for profit, and we're a group of training construction professionals aiming to meet the climate emergency through action. The course focuses on delivering low energy buildings that perform as designed. So we run passive house courses, but we really see there's a lot of learning in passive house, which is really applicable to loads and loads of different parts of construction, just in terms of improving quality and improving outcomes for sort of low carbon. The different courses are along the bottom. Oops, sorry. So there's quite a range. The one we're looking at today is Retrofit Delivery, but other courses are Bite-Size Low Energy, the practical sessions, which are in a couple of different locations around the country, the Passive House Tradesperson course, which is more aimed at contractors or contract managers, project managers, the Passive House Designer course, which is the sort of main course we run and is aimed at architects or engineers or anyone in the design team. And then Retrofit Delivery we're talking about today. And then there's bespoke courses which we run as well, so in-house or for companies as well. So all those. The team. So interestingly, we're not one organization. These people all work effectively, pretty much all work for a different organization and have all come together to deliver what we hope is the best training in this field, certainly the best training in Passive House in the UK. Of all the buildings that have been certified Passive House in the UK, probably one of these people was involved in some capacity. So that's sort of how wide-ranging the experience is. Yeah, it's really good. It's a really good group, working across sort of from individual home, residential, right up to hospitals, healthcare, university buildings, huge offices. So really big range. The nice thing
Oh,
is,
thanks, Will.
yeah, that's all right.
Oh,
Go for it.
sorry,
I'll
go
hand
for
over.
it.
As I say, the nice thing is you get to hear about, you can ask the same question to 10 different people, then you sort of get nearer to the truth of the answer. You know, you can understand so many people, more people, so get more understanding. So, yeah, thank you, Sally.
Lovely. I'm going to go through some of the course content, like why we set it up and what it's aiming to do and what the kind of outcomes we hope of the process of doing it. So this is specifically called Retrofit Delivery because it's about taking a project through the process. So There is technical content in here, but the whole aim of this course is to give you the experience of having gone through a retrofit project so that then you've already delivered one. So when you get onto your real project, you're always like, oh, well, this is the second one. So I'm coming with a whole load of learning about how you actually apply this stuff, okay? Not just about giving you the technical content. It's really important that this is aimed at everybody in the delivery team. So that is both from the contracting side and also from the design side as well. So this is really aimed at particularly lessons learnt on site. And retrofit is really different in an approach, like how you make a success of it. And Will kind of pointed out the kind of defects we're likely to see. And what we're trying to do is address that and say, well, how do you design and create buildings which are going to work as intended? And so a lot of what we're doing is talking about the specifics of retrofit, how those problems manifest, like the example Will gave, and then what do we do as a potential solution? Retrofit is kind of the maddest thing in the world because there is 1,001 different types of construction that you have to learn about. So a lot of what we're doing is trying to give a really good um, kind of toolkit of approaches to things. So what's included in the course? Well, we've got live online teaching sessions. And this is, as Will said, we've got this huge array of trainers with a huge array of experiences, and particularly experience in retrofit themselves. So they're real practitioners in this. There's a load of material that we give to you. It's really important to say that as well as the material that we give you, which is used during the course, there's a massive appendix of examples of how to do things and references to further resources as well, and additional case studies and things like that to really back up and extend your knowledge and give you a useful resource afterwards. It can be used as credit renewal points from the Passive House Institute for either the tradesperson or the designer course. And we can give you a certificate as well for it. There is an expectation that you have a base level of understanding about building performance. If you haven't got one of these, the Passive House tradesperson or designer qualification, then come and talk to us because there might be equivalents or there may be scenarios where it is you don't need to have quite that degree of understanding. But the intention is you've got that solid understanding, and then we're going to go on to saying, how do we apply this in the retrofit scenario and what's the impact of it? Okay, so it's not necessarily hugely technical, it's more about having that base so that we can move on to the application of it. Now, I'm going to show you some examples of the kind of things that we'll be looking at. There's a whole range of topics that we're going to cover, but one of them that I've just picked at random happened to be around wall insulation. So the way we look at this is we start off by saying there is this issue with the performance of our building fabric working, and there's a specific lot of stuff that we need to make it work. And then we say, well, what's special in the retrofit scenario? What things do we have to particularly look out for? And then we move on from here. And this is, again, we've got loads of photographs and examples of real projects. We move on to saying, what are kind of typical solutions and what have we got in our toolkit that will help with this? So we're both identifying the risks and then showing how we kind of go about looking at it. From here, we then move on to our case study building, which we've specifically chosen to have a level of complexity, but also not too complex that it becomes kind of overwhelming. So this is the building that we've chosen. It's a multiple occupancy home. And we then go on to, after having learnt this stuff, we then have a design proposal which we have to crit. So there is information that's provided to us about the insulation strategy, and we have to decide whether we think this is appropriate. What are the risks? How is this going to work? Is it going to be, are there any technical risks? And what are the risks in terms of the construction program? We've got a whole range of different insulation materials and different processes. Is that right? How do we manage that on site? How do we make sure this is a success? And then after that, we then, from going through that particular section to do with the insulation, we then move on to look at other things such as the air and wind tightness, And then going on to looking at the building services and ventilation, really important within this arena that we're both addressing both building services and also the fabric of the building. And looking at details and sequencing and where the risk might be and the different trades that we're going to have to bring in to make this a success. And is that going to work? So once we've done all that and we've kind of looked at it from a design perspective and we've kind of critted the design and said, how, is this ready to go to site and are we happy with the solutions that we have? We then move on to site and we've got hundreds of photos of what was really going on. And there's a story that's built up about exactly what happens, the various activities that are at the very start. And it might be kind of removing the services, taking ceilings down in this particular photo, and then dealing with some the external brickwork, which was a bit damp, for example. And you can see how important it is having the value of real examples here. And then what actually happens on site is no matter how much care and attention has gone into the design and the amount of surveys that we may have undertaken prior to the project, something will happen that is unexpected. Okay. And this is what is so critical for retrofit projects and us ensuring that we get a successful one is making sure we're ready for this and we have the tools in our armory to be able to work out what to do. So this particular case here, we then go into the workshop and work out what are the problems that with this discovery that has happened, how we're going to manage it, how we're going to change what the design proposals are, and then how do we work this out in terms of the contract, and all of these things that are very, very likely. It might not be this specific issue, but this is really typical of the kind of things that you will have happen on your project. So it gives you a really good understanding about both what's likely to happen and then how do you plan for it. After being through this process of going through the site process, and we've got 101 things that go wrong, which are all real problems from real projects of ours that we've kind of pulled together and mashed into our case study, to make it a real roller coaster ride. At the end of it, then we talk about the impacts on cost, the impacts on the contract, and how we make sure that that's a success, and also what the risks are, and how would this be different in different kind of scenarios. So whether it's scaling up the project to something different, whether it's not going so deep in terms of the building fabric, all of these things we can discuss and kind of pull forward so that we've got a really good understanding about how to apply the principles throughout. So the course structure itself, there are 4 modules. The first one is a really quick and dirty introduction to retrofit, the whole building approaches and what things we might want to think about considering that. This is uh, there is not passive house in the name of this, and whilst it does count for credit points, we're not specifically looking at passive house as a standard, and we're not. It is just trying to do a deep quality retrofit where we really need the performance to work. We then go on to look at moisture theory, and this is the only part which we look in more detail than we have done in any of the previous courses, because this obviously is something that we need to have a good understanding for to create successful buildings. Then looking at the theory of it and then going on to work out how do we do the assessment of the risk. We then start looking at the insulation and applying that, going on to look at thermal bridging, air tightness, and building services. Then after we've been through all of that, as I said, we then go on to the case study and the examples that I've shown you. We've got some fantastic comments from previous delegates, and the whole, as I said, the intention of this is to bring the learning of our experience of really delivering these projects and making sure that it's applicable for a whole range of different people. And you can see the examples here of the different where people have come from, very different backgrounds, and that's part of what's so important to us on this course, is that it's aimed at a really broad range, and it's about managing the risk and making sure that we end up with a successful project, both successful in terms of delivering really quality buildings and also that it's done in a way that is at a reasonable cost and everyone feels happy with the outcome. So that's everything from me. I'm really happy if anyone has any questions now, we can go through them, or we can wrap up there.
I've got a question, Sally. Do you cover like internal wall insulation on for
Yes.
solid walls?
Yeah,
Yep.
so there is we cover all of we look at different types of construction, so what are the risks and what are typical solutions. So looking having a kind of broad understanding of all of these things, and particularly the differences in terms of what does it mean for delivery as well. So not just there's information about the technical risk of it, and particularly how that ties into the moisture risk part of it, but also in association with that, uh, what skills does it need and how do we make a success of it? This the particular project that we've chosen has is uh, is interesting to us because of the constraints which we so this is it's a made up project made up of a range of different existing real projects, and because of various constraints, whether they're conservation led or geometry or whatever else, that we have a mixture of solutions of internal wall insulation, external wall insulation, and cavity. So it really means that we get the application of all of those key principles within one case study.
Cool. And this is obviously quite a big project, and someone's done the house all at once. Would the course be covering doing things in little pieces, or not all at once, smaller projects?
Yes, so there is, I think there's an awful lot in here about the approach. And one of the questions that we go through at the end is to talk through how we could do this as a step-by-step retrofit. So how we would think about that, what the implications would be in terms of the cost of it, what things we'd have to consider in terms of when we could get in and what we could do, and things like, what would you do if the occupants were kept in situ? How would you manage that? All of these things, which might be, if you're doing this as a DIY project, then that might be kind of completely applicable to you if you've got to live with your family. We've all been in those kind of situations. So yes, that
Hmm.
is, there's an awful lot of space to talk about those things. In addition, as well as us having fantastic resources in terms of photographs and examples, the trainers come with a wealth of experience about really delivering these things. So it means the breadth of where it can go and the opportunity to ask about uh, the specifics of different scenarios is there.
Yeah, so that's linked to a question Tom's just asked in the chat. Says, is there space or time to present any particular issues with our own retrofit projects within the course for discussion? That's pretty much
So
what you said. Yeah.
yeah. So there is certainly, I mean, there obviously there's always a limit to how much of that we can get into, and it may be that it turns into something that's deeper than we need um, for the course as a whole. But it's certainly the principles, and particularly, yeah, I guess the answer is yes, but there is a limit to how much we can go into to make sure that it's of value to all the delegates.
Great.
Good stuff.
And the course is running on the 16th, the next course, and then how often is it going to run?
Thank you very much. I think I was supposed to do something on that. So um, uh, we generally have 3 or 4 of these per year. So the next one is on the 16th of July. Um, it's uh, it's going to be running for the 4 sessions as normal, and in addition to that, there's a little bit of homework that's required, but not too much. But that's really about making sure that you kind of embed the learning. If there's anything that anything else that you'd like to understand about how it relates to other things as well and other bits of training, it's one of our trainers who's been heavily involved in this course has Sarah Price has also been heavily involved in the retrofit coordinator and the training related
Yeah.
to that stuff. So we're in a really
So
good position to be able to talk about how these uh, how they interlink.
yeah,
I
so
heard
we've passed 2035 is the word you were looking for, maybe, which is the sort of standard which certainly any retrofits involving public money tend to have to comply with, and there's some related training for that. So this doesn't provide you with the qualification, but it certainly shows how it overlaps and shows it probably fills a bit of a gap as well, because on the retrofit coordinator course, a lot of it is around process and risk management and project management, but mainly around risk. Whereas we're talking much more like practical. Here's a solution. Here's a build up. This is what you need to do. So they can be quite complementary.
Exactly. And I think that that is the feedback that we've had from people that have both from Sarah Price, who wrote some of the past 35 guidance, and also from people that have come on our course that are retrofit coordinators, was this is the practical how to do it. That's all the stuff that you need to have in terms of qualification. This is the stuff that will really make it meaningful.
Great.
Good stuff. Lovely.
Good. Yeah. Thank you, everybody. That's hopefully that's given you a good introduction and some information around the course, who you'd be speaking to, who's presenting it, and what's sort of covered. We hope you're still interested. And the website's there. You could search Coaction Retrofit Courses, and you'd find it as well.